Same time, man.
Oh man, it's all right. It's a beautiful day outside. It was a good weekend.
Was
Yeah.
it hot today?
No, it's not hot. It's still cold, but the sun's out.
Yeah,
So,
that's all that matters, eh?
yeah,
And
it
he's
sounds good.
back. And he's back. How's it, Dan? And Dan can hear us, but all good. I'm sure Dan will get back on okay. But today's going to be an
How's it,
awkward one.
Andrew? How's it, Dave? How are you all doing?
Our internet's much better than yours today, hey? And you? Yeah, that's a bit of a delay.
I'm awful internet, but hey, we move. How you
Yeah,
doing,
I'm gonna
Dave?
just
Yeah, there's Dan. There we go. All good. But Josh, so today, Dave, as you know, it's all around maintenance, development, managing builders. Because I always say, Dave, as investors, when you get into a deal and you buy a property, you know what you're in for transfer duty, for transfer fees, for bond rates. It's all there, right? And that tends to stay the same. The biggest for most investors make, it's happened to me, it's happened to you, Dave, it's happened to most investors I know. They go to a project, they get an estimate for a refurb, and Dave, I would probably say 9 times out of 10, if 400 grand was quoted, the bills are going to be more than that. Now, to find a builder, to manage a builder comes on time, at the right spec, and in the right time frame, is almost an impossible task. Would you agree, Dave?
I mean, yeah, it sounds like a it sounds like a dream that you might have. It sounds like something that happens in theory. It's just yeah, no project ever
It's,
goes right. It's just the fact of it. It's just how life is,
yeah.
unfortunately.
No, absolutely, and it's also tough to manage because if you don't have the experience, I mean, so many investors that go buy property, whether it's a flat or a house, and they just think it's a lick of paint, and they forget about things. You know, when you start pulling a wallpaper off or taking a wall down or removing a kitchen and realizing that there's actually asbestos, or they realize that there's something else wrong, and straight away that cost goes up. And Dave, you know, small silly things like people renovating properties and they go paint the house before they do the tiles, for example. They don't know in what order should they be doing all the work on that specific property. So that's what today is going to be about. Hey, Dave, we've got Bruce from Bruno Smart Attorneys talking about contract law, what should be in a contract if you're dealing with builders. We're going to have Mulalo from the Investor of the Year talking about his experience as a property investor in building. And then we'll chat a bit about what's happening on Thursday night. But if you have just joined us, this is the coffee chat with Dave and myself. And today is all about renovating maintenance. So please tag all your friends. If you have anyone that's in or getting into a refurb or maintenance, or if you got any stories to share with us or any golden tips, Sabelo, Sats, Philippe, how's it, guys? If you have any experience that you'd like to share with us in the audience, in the comments box, please let us know, as well as tag in a friend and share with as many people as you can. I mean, Dave, from your side, what's your experience been managing? Do you prefer managing a builder tradesman, or do you prefer managing the individual trades themselves?
So I definitely prefer managing one person. My preference and what I generally teach coaching students is to work with project managers who can then
Okay.
manage subcontractors. There have been a few places where I know the builder and I've got a builder who I can feel like I can treat like a project manager and let them handle all the ins and outs. Fact is, there's just too much that happens on a building site, and I can't stay on top of it all unless I'm there. So you really do need someone on the ground, making sure things are progressing, making sure things are happening, and making sure you're hitting certain milestones. Because one of the things that I know Mauricio talks about a lot is sort of having those milestones in place and only paying out cash when you're contractually supposed to. So it's really important to have the right person in place there.
Yeah, definitely, David. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong. I remember a story of mine back in the UK where the builder pulled the wool over my eyes. As in, when you do a project, there's different stages when you pay. So yes, it's expected to pay something up front that buys for the materials and all of that. But now, bearing in mind, I was 2 or 3 hours away from the site. I was doing a favor for someone else, and the builder pushed me for the second payment. He pushed me, and he pushed me, and he sent me photographs of the work he had done. And I was like, I felt so uncomfortable. But he goes, Andrew, if you don't pay me, all my tradesmen are going to walk off site. But now I couldn't get there. It was like Tuesday. I couldn't get there till the Friday. So he put pressure on me. And I thought, and he sent me the photographs. So big lesson I learned. I paid the second tranche of money. And when I rocked up there, Dave, on the Friday, gone. He
Yeah.
staged, he put kitchen units on. He made it look like he had done the second stage. It was about £7,000, which is a lot of money. And I learned a lesson that day. Never let builders push you. Never let them put pressure on you. Have a project timeline. And what I could have done differently is I could have said at the beginning, I will not release any money until I'm happy with it. So Dave, there's an example of he clearly isn't a project manager. Andrew, direct to builder. The builder pulled the wool over my eyes and he ran away. I chased him. I went into Facebook, but I lost that money, unfortunately. So I think between you, Dave, myself, and all these investors, there must be so many stories out there. If we can all learn from each other, it would be 100%. I mean, Dave, I could keep talking forever, but I better let you go through the events for the weekend next week. We're starting to enter into a phase of quite a few events which are happening in the Sapin world. So, Dave, I'll take it. I'll give it to you, Dave, and then let's bring Bruce on afterwards.
100%. So, like Drew said, we're starting to get into some busy times, but that's always good. So this week on its own, we got 2 events. So we got coaching and legal support webinar. So that's Tuesday. So it's tomorrow night. Runs from about 6 o'clock. Andrew and I host those online along with some people from the Bruno Samar and Intergen teams to answer all your questions and make sure you're all happy. And then Thursday night, Drew, you're hosting a networking event out of South Africa. What's happening there?
Yeah, that's going to be awesome, mate. So for the first time in the history of Sapin, we are running a premier networking event for our intermediate members and our pro members at the South Africa flagship branch in Greenstone. So if you're an intermediate or professional member, you will be invited. Check your emails. And the evening is going to be very different to any other event we do, because most times we go to a restaurant or a hotel, there's presentations, there's a screen. This is a lot more laid back. It's going to be more networking. But yes, we will be looking at doing demos with some of the South Africa staff, taking different types of tiles, laying them, how people are making mistakes when they're laying tiles, talking about the different bathrooms, the cost and what does it cost to renovate a bathroom or kitchen. So on that night, we'll have some informal talks with Marisha and Robus from Gauteng Property Inspections. We'll be having Mark Berman, who's a developer, giving us his experience. It's going to be a lot more. It'll be about an hour worth of talking, but a lot more networking, walking around with the South Africa reps. You can ask as many questions as you want, starting from 6:30. So Dave's going to post the link in the chat box there. But remember, you need to be an intermediate or professional member, and we'll start the event around 6:30 on Thursday night. First time we've ever done an event of this kind. So it's going to be super awesome.
100%. So if you are a member and you want to attend that event on Thursday night, make sure you can check your email, or you can email support to join that. Then a little further afield, the next one to maybe discuss and mention is the 11th of August. We've got a nice big event hosted with ABSA. So that'll also be taking place in Joburg. We'll be talking about all of ABSA's investment solutions. So that'll be a really fun one. That's taking place on the 11th, and I'll put a link over there for everyone in a sec.
Awesome. So that's the public event, open to all our members and open to the general public. Going to be an awesome event as well at a golf club. So please invite your friends and let's make that an awesome evening. Okay, we've got some awesome speakers that night. Coolio.
That's good. All right, Drew, let's get into this.
Yeah, so I think let's bring Bruce on board, and the reason we've invited Bruce is from Bruno Samar Attorneys, and he's going to introduce himself in a minute. And the reason why Bruce is important in this conversation is that it happens so many times when investors get involved directly with builders or tradesmen, and especially if it's a mini development or it's a big job, and the builder pulls the wool over the investor's eye or head or try something funny, and the investor ends up losing money. The investor only then goes to an attorney and says, well, how do I get out of this? How do I chase the builder? What do I do? So I'm going to ask Bruce, if you can introduce yourself, what you do, Bruce, the company you're from, and then let's get into a conversation around the common mistakes that investors are making, okay?
Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Andrew. I'm Bruce Barkhuizen from Bruno Samar Attorneys. I'm an attorney and a notary, specializing in litigation, especially in the property niche. As you said, Andrew, I can go on for hours about the stories I've heard from clients, but there are some key takeaways that can actually protect you in the long term. And you actually mentioned one of them, milestones. Milestones are the bread and butter of a successful building relationship. Without milestones, you'll never know how far the project is. You never know when to release funds. And when the snags come up, you can't address them at the appropriate time. So a big one is milestones. You need those milestones in place. Otherwise, you're asking for trouble. Also, coincidentally. The milestones would also allow you to cost the build a little bit better, because what I found is often builders in particular are able to cost particular phases, not necessarily the entire build. So this way they feel like they are eating a chunk at a time, and hence again it speaks to your budgeting, making sure you're within the realms of the four walls of your contract. Some other big ones that I've seen of late are non-registered builders. This is becoming a lot more prevalent than I'd like to admit. So guys, check and make sure that your builders are registered. Otherwise, you are going to have a lot of trouble, because the beautiful thing about the registered builder is that there are implied warranties with in respect of defects in the building and works. Now, sorry, Andrew.
No, 100%. Keep going.
Something else I've also picked up, and that is poor quality works. Now, this speaks to the reputation of the contractor or the project manager. So you always want to find somebody with an established reputation, somebody who does not have a negative reputation. Often you'll go for the cheapest guy, and unfortunately you get what you pay for. And as Andrew mentioned, don't be pressured by builders or project managers. Stick to the timeframes, stick to the contract, make sure they're registered. Sorry that I'm harping on this again and again, but
No, it's a good point though.
Often clients come to me and it's the same story, unfortunately, over and over again. But something also that I've noticed coming up lately is that the building site has not been properly inspected. Now, the reason why I raise this is because there was a particular case where a client built a property that he wanted to develop, and he did not inspect it, and only upon buying it and preparing the site for the building works did he discover that the complete foundation had almost crumbled due to moisture or whatever the case may be. And obviously this cost a boatload to fix. But sorry.
No, good. But I think this is some really good stuff, and I can see quite a few comments and people private messaging me as well on that subject. But I'm just going to ask you to hold for 2 seconds from you, Bruce, because I want to go into this into more detail. I just want to check, Bruce or Dave, is Mohamed there? Cool. So what I'm going to do, Bruce, is I'm going to bring Mohamed on for a few minutes, and I'm going to come back to you and Mulalo, okay?
100%. Thank you.
Fantastic. Lots to discuss. So, ladies and gents, if you have any questions for Bruce from Bruce Attorneys, now's your chance in the comments box to ask any questions regarding contracts and legal stuff with Bruce. In the meantime, we brought on Mohamed. How's it, Mohamed? Okay, so just make sure you're not muted there on your phone. We can see you perfectly. Okay, so yeah, it's not coming through there. Let me think why it won't be coming through. There, right. You came through.
Gone.
Okay, so as he came through, it died. So is that because of his internet, Dave?
No idea.
Okay, so we're gonna have to, leave that one then. Let's try again.
Sorry, is it working now?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I've got a new iPhone and I'm sitting in my car, so technology is not always on my side.
No, absolutely not. Well, Mohamed, thanks so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, and you did a really awesome webinar for us last week, Thursday, around rising energy prices, interest rates have gone up. So all I want from you, Mohamed, for the next few minutes is, could you give us an overview of that? What should investors be feeling? Should we be scared, worried? Is it opportunity? What's your overall thoughts on that?
Okay, so I think we can start with the interest rate one. A lot of people were very concerned, seeing this as a surprise. It's not really a surprise. Remember, the Reserve Bank's mandate is to look after inflation and to look after the currency. So obviously they're going to do, whatever's in their interest to keep inflation down. So rate hike is expected for the next year or two. These cycles are not very long. We are already at a very low interest rate. Remember in lockdown when they cut the rates by 100 basis at one time. If you look at a graph of the interest rates over time, we are in quite a low interest rate environment. Now, I know it means that you're going to be paying a little bit more for the next year, but the flip side of that, remember, if you've got tenants have a certain amount of money with which to satisfy more than one expense, rental being one of them. If inflation is present, then the amount that can be spent on rental goes down because everything else is gone too expensive. So an interest rate hike means that everything else will not go up in price too badly, meaning consumers have more money to spend on rent and household expenditure. So that would mean you'd actually be in a better position because you'd have less defaults. You'd have tenants who can afford to pay your rental. So it's not all doom and gloom. And some parts of the market, interest rate doesn't really change anything. Rentals are fixed and they don't change that much anyway. I would factor in another 1 or 2 rate hikes coming our way. And it just tells you that you need to be managing your property properly because there's a lot of expenses going up.
Absolutely. So you reckon it's going to go up to what percent by the end of the year, eh?
Well, I think we'll probably get another at least 25 bips coming before the end of the year, and then maybe some more next year. So the key thing to watch is the inflation forecasts, because the inflation is a leading indicator of rates. And the Stats SA do the inflation targeting every single month. So if you keep watching that, once you see inflation start slowing down, you can already expect that interest rates won't go up anymore. I would watch the inflation number for the next 3 months.
Absolutely. And in your opinion, should investors be positive or negative moving forwards?
I think we should be positive about this. Remember, a rise in interest rates also means that returns have to go up. And this is a time when a lot of people will be also selling, and there'll be lots of opportunity to buy. It's a good time to get into the market.
Absolutely, because if there's more stock, if the general public get worried about these interest rates hikes, it means that there'll be less buyers in the market, but there could be more stock in the market. And that's the opportunity can come from, right?
Yes, exactly that. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, no, brilliant, Mohamed. Was there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with this afternoon?
Well, like I say, I mean, if we see that this rising costs are a trend going forward, then that just means you have to either offer a better product or you have to manage your property exceptionally well. And you can only do that if you have expertise and people helping you to figure out how that's done.
Absolutely, and making sure the margins are definitely there.
Yes, exactly.
I think there's a few investors that are quite squeezed at the moment, and with interest rates going up and prices going up, if they aren't able to increase their rents, they could be going from a positive cash flow to a negative cash flow. So they have to really sharpen their pencils and watch those numbers, eh?
That's right. Absolutely, Andrew.
Definitely. Well, Mohamed, thank you very much for your time, eh? Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you very much. Take care.
That's a pleasure. We'll see you soon, eh?
Okay, bye.
Okay, cheers, eh? Yeah, bye. There's Mohamed Gardee, who we just come in for a quick little chat on his opinion on the market. So, Dave, let's bring Bruce back on. There is a question for Bruce. So if you just joined us, this is Andrew and Dave's Coffee Chat. And today's all around builders, renovating, maintenance. We've got Mulalo, who will join us just now. And Bruce is an attorney. Bruce, and you've had a lot of experience dealing with property investors and developers of property investors and builders. And you're talking about how things could go wrong. And I think the one thing we both mentioned there, Bruce, was if you are dealing with a builder or project manager, and just say for argument's sake, it's a 400,000 rand renovation, you're talking about the importance of stage payments, right? Let's just go into that quickly.
100%. The fact of the matter is, unfortunately, there are a lot of developers and builders who are of ill repute and will take your money and run. I mean, all you have to do is watch carte blanche for their Sunday special and see which contractors have decided to vanish into thin air. That being said, there are some practical things you can do. As you mentioned, staggering payments over the lifespan of the builds. That at least that way you keep your contractor honest you limit your risk of loss of the complete amount. Also, and this allows you to control the disbursements, because I've noticed a trend with some project managers that they will charge a fee and they'll charge a disbursement and they'll keep the two separate. So what's key is actually managing both, and this you can do by staggering the matter over its lifespan. So you're spot on. Now, this question that I saw that was asked, sorry, it looks very interesting.
Is that from Sonele?
Yes. Now, here we've got, there's a legal answer and there's a practical answer. Sorry, I'm one of those attorneys who tries to offer both answers. I believe in practicalities. Now, legally speaking, this land is possibly owned by the community. So it's communal land. So getting your title deed could be a bit of an uphill battle. It is, strictly speaking, possible. How probable and whether it's cost effective? Now, that's the question. How long is a piece of string? Now, that being said, you could always approach from a practical perspective. Hi, tribal authority, I'd like to lease this land for a particular period of time so I can build an estate. I can lease it out on a long-term basis. This is perfectly doable. And it might be a little bit more practical and a lot more efficient with respect to time as well. But truth be told, it is a bit of a difficulty to get that land into your personal name. It's perfectly possible, but it does require community engagement, because the last thing you want is a dissatisfied community who unfortunately hampers your development. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Bruce and Dave. I see there's a few comments in here if you want to read them.
There's some long ones over here. Nosey's got a bit of a story where they've been managing their own projects. So this is fairly common for a lot of investors to get involved in sort of self-project manage. It's not something I like to do for many reasons, mostly time. But yeah, at the end of the day, highlighting a few issues where you might be using an unregistered plumber and then you can't get a COC. So when something goes wrong, then no one can hold that plumber accountable, and insurance won't cover the work done. And my neighbors have started again. Miguel says he's on a new large build, and he recommends that you pay the builder for the work done, not the work they're going to do. Also, make sure that you're paying separately for hours and labor, and materials are separate, and you're tracking that as two separate things.
100%. In fact, I often find it a red flag when some builders try and incorporate the two, and it just becomes a big mess.
Yeah. Are you talking about labor and material now?
Yes. The moment they smash their fee and disbursements together, and you can't differentiate the two. Often they would inflate those disbursements to try and make a little bit of extra.
Yeah, agreed. And I do agree with you, Miguel. That's what I try to do as well, where I'll go buy the material direct through SAP, and we'll approach certain suppliers like Tile Africa, for example, get the discount, and then just pay for the labor. It's a bit more work, a bit more admin, but you know exactly what you're paying for. So I totally agree. And so, Bruce, I'm going to be asking you a question around, if there's an investor doing a small renovation, I'm going to ask you, what are some of the clauses that should be in there? We're talking a one-page contract. We're talking a 60-page contract. So just think about that for 2 seconds. But if you just joined us, ladies and gents, this is Andrew and Dave's Coffee Chat at 1 o'clock, talking all about renovations and builders. And there must be so many stories out there. I've got loads to tell. I know Dave's got lots of stories, Bruce, all of us. So please share any insights you've got with us now. And this will lead nicely into this Thursday night, because on Thursday evening, Sapin is running a premier event at the Tile Africa store in Greenstone for intermediate and our professional members, where we've got Tile Africa giving us some insights. We have a few very experienced investors giving us some insights into lessons learned, the pitfalls, how should you manage a project, what type of tiles do you choose for what type of strategy. So if you are a pro or intermediate member, make sure you do join us on Thursday night. Now, Bruce, let's say there's an investor, a newbie investor. I mean, how detailed does this contract have to be? Are there just a few simple clauses we can put in there?
Unfortunately, the answer is yes and no. I know you love lawyers giving that sort of answer.
Of course.
Some works, truth be told, can be done in a single page agreement. For instance, just redo the bathroom, right? These are the parameters, and you staple on the parameters to the contract. That being said, that's if everybody abides by the contract, there's no problems, it's smooth sailing, nobody fights, it's not complicated, everything's transparent, the costs are never overrun. Now, tell me, how often does that happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, key things which I feel need to be dealt with in the contract is the scope of work. You definitely need to have a fixed plan as to what needs to be done, small or larger.
And then on that point you got there, Bruce, I want to go into detail. So we're talking about, because this happened to me, right? I had a sparky come in, an electrician, and we walked around the house, and I'm going back years now. And when it came to the work that he did, I said, but what about the double point on that wall? And weren't you putting 2 double points? Oh no, you just put a single socket in there. Yes, I'm doing the wiring in that bedroom, but I didn't specify how many actual, I thought I specified. In fact, I'm sure I did specify it. As I walked around the property, what I obviously didn't do was write that down, for example. So when you talk about the scope of work, you've got to be so detailed. For example, the guy's going to put a new kitchen in for you. So he gives you a price to put a new kitchen in. You're assuming that includes him taking the kitchen out. So now it comes to go, well, actually, I'm going to put the new kitchen in, but can you get it removed? No, but you gave me the quote of 100,000 rand. Aren't you taking the kitchen out? Right? Now there's an extra cost of whatever it is. And that's how detailed you have to be, right?
Unfortunately, you're spot on. I've seen even contracts, cases where the Sparky would put in old plugs instead of the new standardized plug. And of course, it will affect your COC and whatnot. And you're absolutely right. The more detail in the scope of work, the better, by far. Because coincidentally, the scope of work will also speak to your milestone schedule.
Definitely. I think this is where you've also got to have a level of education going. There's a scope of work, and you've got to also somehow manage what happens next. Yes, the experienced builder should do that for you, but I think as an investor, if you're spending a few 100,000 rand, make sure you work with someone that can guide you to say, this job will be first, then the second, then the third, and you agree that level of scope with the builder.
100%. I mean, last thing you want is they're redoing the cupboards in the kitchen and they're dropping tools on your newly tiled floor. Doesn't make sense.
Yep, exactly. So scope of work. The scope of work, you said, then leads into the milestones going. This is a 2-month project, so the estimated time is 2 months. Is a buffer of 10 days, whatever the case might be, and that the builder is saying he wants X amount now in month. On the first of August, he wants 50,000 rand, and then once the works have been done, then a second payment of X. But in that, it'll state that the investor or the project manager must sign those works off. Would you put 100%. That into the contract?
I would do exactly that. Now you're also starting to speak about inspections and snag lists, which are also vital, especially to the likes of small renovations, because they tend to be finicky at times, to put it mildly.
And one thing you must all be careful of, it's happened to me before, years ago again, when you're working with a busy builder, so he's managing different sites, what tends to happen, not all the time, but for some of the builders, you make a payment for your project. Your payment then ends up going to another project. Your project then gets delayed because the builder doesn't have cash flow. Now that's very difficult. That's very difficult for you to manage because you can't manage his or her cash flow. But you've got to be conscious of it, because it happened to me where I paid the money and I got excuse after excuse why the project was delayed. And after a good few weeks of actually looking into it, we came to the conclusion that he had used our cash flow for our project on someone else's. And that, to me, I don't know, Bruce, if you've come across that before.
You must be reading my mind. I'm actually working on a matter where something like that actually happened, and it was millions that vanished. Sometimes the loss can be staggering. And what's worse is that you discover that your building contractor or your project manager underquoted, and then suddenly now it's that on top of everything.
Absolutely. And that's why, Bruce, where you can, it's very important that you buy the materials yourself, because if for whatever reason you do pay a bit of labor across and the builder does run away, at least you have the materials. and you can bring another builder on site. You've always got to think, what happens if something goes wrong. In fact, Dave, there's a comment there from Miguel if you want to read it out.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things Miguel's saying over here is don't build and renovate for the first time without getting an experienced friend or investor to look over the contract with you. Even better, get someone like Marisha Robus, 100%, to review and advise on the project to be done, to get the project done and contract signed. I think on that, having someone external, like a property inspector, to come and do those inspections halfway through, especially for big milestones. If you're going to have Marisha go in and sit and she gives you a full list of all the things that are wrong, it's a lot easier to go and have that conversation with the builder and say, look, this is why I'm not releasing payments. These are the 10 things that aren't done properly to the correct standard. Whereas if you're just sort of leaving it up to your own experience, then that's definitely going to be lacking in some regards.
Yeah, definitely. And I think David's one of those where people need to see the value in someone like Marisha Robus, because they go, I've got to pay an inspector 4,000 Rand or 5,000 Rand to come into inspection. What they don't realize is that 4,000 or 5,000 Rand could potentially save them hundreds of thousands because of lack of experience, getting to a certain point of the project where they run out of money, the builder runs away, they have now lost 50,000 Rand. So all the beginners out there need to understand the value, or need to see the value in a professional like Marisha Robus, who will be joining us, by the way, on Thursday night. So if you've got any issues with renovations or builders or developers and you want to get to speak to Marisha one-to-one, you'll see her this Thursday night. Cool. So Dave, was there anything else coming in on the comments?
Sorry, my neighbors are having fun with drills today. There is another one, but I wanted to see if Bruce wanted to add anything to the previous one before I moved on to the next one.
Cool.
All good. Let's see his comment.
Anything there, Bruce? Or are you good?
I'm good. That being said, guys, just to all the viewers, bear in mind that Marisha, what she charges is a lot less than what us attorneys charge. So in the long term, you'll actually be saving money. Just think of it that way. Or you're rather amortizing the total cost across your portfolio of properties. So it is not money wasted. It is well worth it.
Yeah,
I agree. So I think, Dave, what we should do is take this question for Bruce, and then we'll bring on Mulalo afterwards,
100%. Cool. So question for Bruce. We bought a plan in 2020. The bond was guaranteed. Occupation was planned for July last year. The development hasn't broken ground to this day. How can one exit the contract without losing the deposit paid?
First and foremost, I'm so sorry to hear about this, but I'll be perfectly honest, it's becoming a lot more prevalent now that we have left the state of disaster. That being said, there were certain terms in the agreement as to the development. For instance, there would be milestones. This would have to be happen, and that would be in the actual agreement. Hopefully, I'll be honest with you. There are some developers who do have wishy-washy agreements, and they don't have fixed time periods, and it becomes a nightmare. Then we have to resort to technicalities. But that being said, you could put the developer place them on terms. I want my developed unit. If you don't give it to me, I'm going to cancel the contract. So they offered the opportunity to rectify their breach. If they don't rectify the breach, then you can terminate the contract and recover the deposit. That being said, if there's a clause that says the deposit is non-refundable, it'll be a little bit more difficult, but it's not impossible. We could always say that they had no intention of complying with the agreement. In fact, this was more of a pump and dump sort of operation, in which case you say you repudiated the agreement, I'm accepting it, pay back all the money. So there is a way, there's always a way to go about trying to get the funds back. Most contracts, in order to be something that's reasonably short, they often leave out clauses that would make them otherwise bulletproof. I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, I think it did. Bruce, thank you so much, man. I can see there's a question there as well for, hey, Dave, can you recommend a Marisha Robus equivalent in Cape Town? So, Dave, I know that Marisha's got a person who's doing inspections on her behalf, right?
Yeah, 100%. Marisha's got a partner, so you can still contact Marisha, or better yet, just reach out to me via email, and I can do an introduction to some of my inspectors. Really hard to give that sort of thing over live stream, but there are definitely a few good inspectors in Cape Town that you can use.
Awesome. Sounds good. Okay, great. Well, let's keep Bruce on. Just in case that there's more legal questions for you, Bruce. Well, let's bring on Mulalo, who was the winner of the big leagues for Investor of the Year 2021. And Mulalo did an awesome job for the Opal with a few hundred students, I believe. Mulalo, let's start off by you introducing yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And then let's get into from an investor point of view. Do you have any tips for our audience about developing and managing builders?
Hi everyone, my name is Mulalo. I'm a geologist by profession, and in 2018 I've decided to start my journey in property development, and I started by buying 2 small houses which I was renting students, and then in 2019 I have applied for funding, which it was granted in 2019. I was supposed to start early 2020, but due to COVID, my construction was delayed. But January last year, we started building. It's 94 units, 376 beds. We completed it in December last year, and the handover was Feb this year. And our first students was in March, and currently we are just under 50% occupancy since from March.
Wow. And tell me, Mulalo, how big is it? Is it 3 stories? Is it 200 units? How many was it again?
It's 2 stories, 376 beds.
376 beds. That's amazing, eh? And that was the deal that you entered the Investor of the Year with, right?
That's true. That is true.
Awesome. Now, Mulalo, I want to know from you, from an investor point of view, you were managing builders, weren't you, or managing tradesmen? Can you just tell us, how did you do that? What lessons did you learn? If somebody wants to go buy or build student accommodation and do what you did, looking back at how you ran the project, is there anything that you do? Would you do everything the same, or any big lessons that you learned?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of lessons that I've learned, especially what Bruce was saying now. The contract is the most important thing for somebody to start with. When you are building, I've learned that no matter how small the project is, you need to have something written down. Because throughout the construction, I had some piece job, 1 day, 2 day job that I've called people to come in and do. But because I underestimate that, I've lost a couple of money, because people will come 1 day and then they're gone, and then I have to find somebody again. So one thing that I can stress is that contract is very, very, very much important. And then another thing that I can advise is that make sure that whatever you start, you are building, whether it's small or big, you must have a scope of work. And then tie your scope of work with the budget, the amount of money you are willing to spend. It will help you to understand the project, and then be involved, understand what is happening. Don't say, okay, it's my project, but you allow somebody to run it through for you. During my project, I was there almost twice a week, and from day 1 to the last day, I attend all the meetings the contractors, the professionals were doing, and it opened my eyes. I've managed to save money in so many ways, because in a meeting, they will be talking about some unforeseen expenditures, some challenges, and then because I was part of the meeting, I could say, let's use this instead of this, and then we end up it helps on the progress. The building progress become faster because decisions were made faster, and then again we managed to save the money. There were challenges we faced because of COVID. Some of the prices of the things, you find that it was less, but because of COVID, by the time we went after a year, it was like almost double. So we had to sit in the meeting and then do the value engineering, cut down the cost. I remember we were supposed to plaster and paint. I said, no, let's remove plaster and painting inside the apartments. We plaster only three walls, and then the other one we said, let's make it like it's a deco. But the main aim was to cut the cost. Yeah. So it's very important to be involved, to be part of it. And then another thing which is very important is the payments conditions, inspection, and then do the snag list. Make sure by the time you pay, you are happy with what has been done.
Absolutely. So checking the work off, right, before you make the payment.
Yes.
Okay. And did you come across any situations on your project where you inspected the builder wants his payments and you're like, well, no, I'm not going to give it to you until you fix the snag?
Yes, so we have a couple of things that we had to fight, and then they have to go back and do the work, and then we pay them later.
Absolutely. Yeah, Bruce.
Sorry, Mulalo. Firstly, congratulations. It's a very big achievement. But secondly,
thank you very much.
I'm very interested to find out, what would you have done different with the experience now that you have?
I can say 90% I can repeat. 10%, it's just there's a little bit of things that I can say I would love to change. There were cases where we have a point like one professional was doing multiple jobs. You'll find that it's a project manager, architect, or again running another portfolio. So you find that I'm using one professional because of his qualification or status to do multiples, and then that is sacrificed because in most cases you find that the person has more authority to do a lot of things, and then it sacrifices the project because now all the power is now loaded under one person. If I have to go back, I will individual an independent project manager, independent architecture, and make sure that these two people, they deliver on the project.
Thank you. That was very interesting, actually.
100%. And I think it comes down to what Miguel was saying there, Bruce and Dave, regarding when you're getting into this for the first time, whether it's a development or a renovation, you don't know what you don't know. So here's the four of us talking about scope of work. We're talking about payments, when you make payments. And some people may know of it, but don't actually realize the depth that you've got to go into. Some of these investors may get intimidated by the builder or might be pushed into making a payment before the snag, because they'll say things to you like, I'm going to kick my guards off the ground. If you don't make payment by 4 o'clock, my guards are going to walk off site. And I put that pressure on you. So for anyone out there who wants to get into a development or you're going into a renovation, there's plenty of support out there for you. You just want to get it right in the beginning. It's going to cost you a lot of money if you don't. Mulalo's worn that t-shirt. Bruce sees it all the time from a league perspective, and so has Dave. So make sure that if you are in Joburg and you're an intermediate or pro member, make sure you join us on Thursday night, because we'll be taking this discussion and going through a lot more detail on it on the Thursday night. But Mulalo, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience for today?
Yeah, my last words could be saying, it's not how big the project could look like. It's your determination. If you want to make things happen, you can do it. You just need to have a plan in place and then put action on it.
Definitely, yeah. Awesome, Mulalo, and thank you so much. Mulalo, we will be launching Investor of the Year 2023 for next year, August. Can you believe that? So you'll be part of that journey as well, just like you're part of the last year's journey for Investor of the Year. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, Mulalo. We'll speak to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
So yeah, Bruce, it looks like we're all saying the same thing, aren't we? Scope of work is so important. What do you need? But be detailed. Spend the time on the project at the beginning. Then start talking about payment terms. Then taking Miguel's experience in terms of could you go buy your materials and then pay for labor? Some builders don't like it because they want to mark things up, but you can do it that way. I mean, from your side, Bruce, what would you like to leave our audience this afternoon?
Well, you've actually touched on the scope of work, milestones, payment schedules are definitely key and critical. Also, something that might be helpful is an independent dispute resolution clause. Now, sometimes it is a bit of a contentious clause, but sometimes that tension is actually good for the relationship. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes that tension leads to a successful project.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, cool, Bruce. Bruce, are we seeing you Thursday night or not?
100%. You'll see me there.
Awesome. So if you have any contractual questions, I'm going to make sure that everyone comes to you, Bruce, on Thursday night.
Looking forward to it.
Definitely. Okay, cool, Bruce. Thank you so much. It is 1:45, so we will start wrapping up. So, Dave, I think everyone knows about this Thursday night at the South Africa Greenstone branch. Please don't just rock up. We have to cater, so you have to book in advance. If you're a pro or intermediate member and you're in the Joburg region, I'll be there. My team will be there. We've got some very experienced developers and investors coming as well, talking around this subject in more detail with the attorneys. And then Dave will say the next event, there's one on Tuesday night as well, which is tomorrow.
We're coaching legal support tomorrow night, so that's at 6. That's online. That's for anyone who's got some of our courses. So if you've got a fundamentals course, anything like that, or if you're an intermediate or professional member, you've got access to that, or if you're SAP and youth. So all you guys can come join. If you've got questions like this, we will have some representatives from BSA and Intergen online. So if you've got some legal questions, then we can definitely rope those into Lexus will probably be online for us for tomorrow, which will be good.
Exactly.
So if you can't make the South Africa event on Thursday, there's that.
Cool. And then the next big one's the 11th of August,
100%. ABSA 11 August. That's going to be a fun one. It's going to be good. I guess
That's
we'll
gonna
have
be live.
Miguel on soon.
Yeah, Miguel will be on that. Hey, Miguel, you and your team talking all different aspects of our ABSA Bank is supporting property investors here in South Africa. So check the links out. Dave has posted all the links for us in the chat boxes. Tag your friends and let them know about it. And we will see you all soon. Anything from your side, Dave?
No, that's it. Thanks. It's all good.
Awesome. Cool. Cheers, everyone.